Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for July 10th, 2026. I'm Benji Fisher, sharing my screen and moderating, and also present are Ralph Kohler, Simo Helston, and Thomas Howell. Thank you all for joining. So I guess Ralph and Thomas looked at this issue a couple of weeks ago. I missed that meeting. It is issue 3588144. Expose context-sensitive help about any relevant CLI commands. Um, Thomas or Ralph, would one of you like to describe what this is about since you've already looked at it?
Uh, yes, I can. I've made a few notes back then, so I can basically read of them and summarize what we've talked about and came up with. Um, or in case, Thomas, you want to.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. So I quickly summarized the suggestion at first and then what we came up with during our discussion. If you could scroll down a little bit to comment number 8 by Ifrik. Um, she basically clarified what this issue or the suggestion is basically about. It's basically adding a block. In her suggestion, she placed it right underneath the help text and provides sort of an for your information block that this functionality is available in the newly available dr command in Drupal core, which basically replaces or provides functionality that is currently available in Drush, and to basically inform the people not following Drupal core development that close that, for example, this functionality could be basically also triggered in the CLI. And that's the gist of it, basically, what this issue is about. And Thomas summarized it pretty well with the saying, you don't even know what you don't know. And we've branched out a little bit and extended the scope, not necessarily for this issue, but we thought a little broader. And basically, we thought several scenarios. You have basically someone who is familiar with Drupal core, with all the functionality there. For those people, this block would basically an annoyance if they know everything about it, so it doesn't make sense for them. But then there are people, they are familiar that those exist, but who could also need basically a reminder. And then there are those people not familiar with Drupal or with that advanced functionality that dr command provides. And for those, that block showing all the time would be a benefit. And yeah, those Drupal CLI commands is one point. And then we've extended that problem not only exists for Drupal CLI, but also you also have basically the case of all the descriptions you have underneath. For example, in this case, if you look at this at the screen right now, you see basically the maintenance mode page with the help text underneath the block, and then you have, for example, the checkbox with put site into maintenance mode, and then you have again a long description with a lot of text. And for people familiar what those functionality is doing, that is also visual clutter over information. The cognitive load is increased to basically phase out that information. So that is another point. And then is also the point of sort of a glossary in context with, for example, that stems into the Drupalisms discussion. And there's also the point for people familiar with Drupal, all those Drupalisms, aka definitions, what a concept stands for is clear. On the other hand, there are some people that basically are oblivious and could basically need a reminder. And then people new to Drupal, it's totally abstract. And so the idea was twofold, to have basically in air quotes, training wheels that you have the option in the admin interface based on the user that they have either basically the option to, for either Drupal CLI, descriptions, or glossary, shows those in the admin CLI all the time, then have sort of, for example, those descriptions a hidden mode and also the options to completely hide them on a per user basis. And on the other hand, also, and we don't want it to include everything into the single issue, but basically add a broader scope. So those points are not only for basically the Drupal CI commands, but also for descriptions and glossary. And also in the just in the context of that Drupal CI, we also thought not only providing basically in context a block, it would be also good to have basically, could you go to the sidebar, please, in the Drupal admin interface?
Okay, so hang on.
In,
Let me, oops, I'm trying
yeah,
to
we're already
rearrange
in
my
there.
tabs here.
And go to the help page.
Wait a minute. So first of all, let me share the link in the Zoom chat in case anyone else wants to use it. And as usual, super secure credentials, admin. No, I don't want to save that in my password manager. Okay. And what do you want me to
And
do in the sidebar?
go to the help section, to the help top level menu item. Yep, click that, and basically adding there a section for basically those Drupal CLI commands, so that you have basically a list of all available commands at a certain point, so that people not only have the option to see the command in context on a certain page where it's available, but they also have basically a dedicated section in the help page, on the help page, that also lists all the available commands, so that you have not a single point of entry, but several touch points for a user to get the information they need if they need it. And same goes basically for the glossary. The glossary could also be added with basically a with the description, with the definitions for the different concepts used in Drupal. But yeah,
Uh,
those glossary point is totally in the future. All thought was basically just the starting point should be the Drupal CI commands.
okay, so let's take a pause here. So first of all, the context is that um, Drush is going to be replaced by something in Drupal core.
Yep.
Um, and we already have the framework in place and a few commands. Um, and now that uh, some commands in the framework are in core, we're starting to think about how we can better integrate it. And for example, if I go to the maintenance page, so what is that configuration system?
No,
No,
under development, performance,
development,
and performance.
performance, maintenance mode. Here we go. So this is where the screenshot in the issue comes from. So you can put the site into maintenance mode by checking off the box and saving the form. Um,
But
that's
that is
something
at the
you,
moment not possible yet in Drupal CI.
okay, but hypothetically, in the
Yeah,
not too distant future, it would be, oh, and I guess you were suggesting configuration,
clear caches.
development, performance.
Exactly, clear caches. That is actually currently already possible. That's why I suggested to go here.
right? And so this issue is all about the discoverability of these CLI commands now that they're available in core. Um, and and the recommendation is to add a little help block saying, oh, by the way, you could also use the CLI to do this.
Yep.
Simo, Thomas, do you have questions or comments at this point?
I think that Ralph hit on all my major points already. Thank you.
Okay. And what did I want to say? So I guess what one of your points, Ralph, was that yeah, a similar approach might help with Drupalisms, which I know you and Thomas have spent a lot of time thinking about. But let's put that off for now because it's not really part of this issue. Um, and I guess your main point is that there's always a disadvantage of adding information to an admin screen. It's increasing the clutter, and that may or may not be useful depending on the user. So perhaps we should consider the um, different types of users, different personas. That's the word I'm looking for. And this might be useful for beginners and might be less useful for experienced users. So you're suggesting that there be a user preference um, that governs whether or not these messages show up. Go ahead, Thomas.
Just, I was going to say briefly, but I'm never brief. Um, the big thing that makes this kind of stand out to me as a primary example of what Ralph, all the points Ralph brought up, was that I've been in instances where you had people who maintained the websites, so they were uh, in the administrative view, but they would have no access to the CLI. They would never be able to use a CLI. And so forcibly putting this information everywhere um, treats everything in the administrative view as if they're, and you, I think you said it very succinctly with the different audiences, like there are different types of people who use the administrative view. So categorically adding this everywhere the way it's right now seemed really overblown, and it's just so weird and confusing for someone who may not be able to even use that or act upon it. So I was just thinking, like, what's this going to look like 5 years later on a website that's been up for 5 years where you still have to see this on every page, but you can never use it?
Okay. And Simo?
Yeah, and one thing like when we talk about CLI, I think a lot of my users don't have a clue what a CLI is, what it stands for. So that's already confusing. So it should be explained what is CLI. So, because it's abbreviation that not all people are familiar with.
Okay, and you're getting a thumbs up from Ralph. Um, so another of Ralph's points was that in addition to the context sensitive help, we should gather all of these together on the main help page. Um, and in addition to topics and module overviews, we could have a section for CLI commands. And that would provide perhaps a solution for people who don't even know what CLI stands for. we could have a link in this little context-sensitive block that would take you to the appropriate section of the main help page, or um, maybe a topic on the CLI command. And I wonder, sorry, I'm sort of thinking out loud here. Should we have a separate section on the main help page, or should we have a topic on the CLI command? And then a link from one of these could go to that topic. Ralph?
Um, 2 points in regard of the last question. I would make it a dedicated section instead of basically a top task there underneath in the help section. That way, it's not necessarily clear that someone really finds the list of basically available commands, and it should be basically way more easy to access from my point of view. And in regard of the point you made with providing a link to the help page, that is also one of the reasons why I and Thomas have extended the scope and also brought in the examples of descriptions in glossary, because again, glossary then has the problem if you forward to the help page that you're getting out of the context. If you have basically Drupal CLI commands as well as glossary as an in context option, a user on a per user basis that's configurable if somebody needs that information, or it is hidden, or it's completely switched off. But that way, have basically something like a information button or something like that, so that somebody who doesn't know what a CLI is gets basically a pop-up, or however we have not discussed the implementation, but simply just to provide the definition in context as well as provide the glossary with all the definitions in the help text as well as a list, same as the Drupal CLI commands. But try to basically provide information that is necessary in context always, either for Drupal CLI commands or glossary or descriptions if necessary.
All right, so you think my suggestion of a link to the help page is problematic because it takes you out of context, and you'd rather have something you could click on and bring up an info window or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it problematic, but I think provide the information in context where it's needed is the preferable approach from my point of view.
Okay. Thomas?
Sorry. Um, I would add to the discussion that I think we could look at this as something we do incrementally,
Yeah.
in that we could start with adding something to the help page for this issue. So as part of this issue, we require that like you need to have some sort of link there that goes to the help page so that we can if we wanted to go through with this change, it has the information that people need to make this like functionally useful. But I do like absolutely concur with Ralph. I think that the larger issue should be that the larger scope should still be captured and made available for us to act on. But I don't know that this has to be dependent upon completing the larger scope. I think that we can come up with a shorter term solution that then dovetails into a larger scope solution and would replace what that short term approach was. Thank you.
Okay. Ralph?
Yeah, and the point we made or agreed on back then, Thomas and I, was also the reason why we've added the description and the glossary examples here. And it is out of scope for this issue, definitely, but it otherwise, if you just would look at the Drupal CI commands and then you present them, we need a in context a per user setting that either shows the block or a permission first, then for users that have that permission, then have the option to either show it, hide it with that info button, or however it's implemented, or completely remove it. And then also add the list to the help text just and for your information detail that would be quite a lot of work and complexity. And that way it wouldn't be probably reasonable and would be discarded. But if you bring in the broader context with descriptions and glossary and so forth, and make the case that way, it become way more reasonable. But still, as Thomas said, it should be an incremental approach. And the starting point should simply be the Drupal CAI commands, but it should be extended, and the goal in perspective should also be descriptions and glossary. Oops.
Okay, so in implementing this issue, you would like to establish a pattern that can be used for other purposes as
Yeah.
well, rather than trying to do everything at once.
Yep.
Thomas?
And I'd note that there's also the simple pattern that this issue is introducing, which is if a admin page has a corresponding CLI command, you make that command visible on the page. So we probably want to then make that a recommended best practice anywhere in the administrative view. If there is a page that corresponds to a CLI command, we should be making this consistently available. Otherwise, this is kind of weird to only make it available here and not have the CLI commands visible for cache refresh or anything else of that nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the idea here is that anytime you add a CLI command to core, you should create the little info message that'll go on the corresponding admin page.
Precisely. So just making certain that this is viewed as part of that larger issue. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. And Ralph?
Then if a pattern should be established for the Drupal CI commands, then there should be also the question where the block should be placed. Because, for example, from my perspective, placing a block right after the help text is also not necessarily prominent or could basically be noticed because most people not necessarily read or skim through the entire help text. And if you have a small blob at the end, I'm not sure if it's not highlighted in a certain manner, not sure if it's basically catched up or noticed at all by anyone. And also the question for screen reader users, also unsure. And also the question if is this the example for the maintenance mode page? But if you go to the performance page, could you switch
Mm-hmm.
over the tab, please, for a second? Um, there it would where it would go there because here you, for example, don't have a help text. Should it go into the field set for clear cache, or should it? Because there that is the context that command would be available for the clear cache, not for the entire page. And there should be some sort of consensus about the rules behind where to place the block then. And I'm also not
So,
sure from a technical perspective where because you're unable to use that block layout page for that, if I'm not completely wrong. So there are many questions in regards of the implementation then.
okay, so I was also thinking about the block layout page. And why do you say this can't be used for that?
I don't say it can't be used. Uh, I'm in lack of the imagination how it could be used.
Okay, so I guess sort of the broad question is how to manage the placement. Should it go into, you know, should it be added right after the help text on the form, as this screenshot suggests? And by the way, the red box, I assume is meant just to call
Highlight.
attention to it in the
Yeah.
screenshot, not intended to be actually part of the user interface. But um, but in terms of block placement, we already have a, where is it? We have a help block put in the highlighted region. That's for Umami. For the backend theme, Claro. Um, there's a special help section with a help block. And I don't know offhand whether I can come up with an example, but maybe the maintenance page is an example of that. Um, so let's see, is this part of the form description or is this a separate block? Ah, yes. The ID is block Claro help. So, so this is the help region, and there's one block in the help region. So it would be pretty straightforward to create a new block and let site administrators position the block, and it could go right after the usual help block. So again, going back to the block placement page, you could have the help block, and then you could have the CLI help block. Um, and that would automatically give you the option to configure it per role. And for users who don't have access to the CLI typically, you could just not grant them permission to see that block. So that would solve a lot of our suggestions. It wouldn't give per user control over the blocks, but it would give per role control over the block. Ralph?
Just one question. Does any one of you know, is it always one drush command per page, or do you know any page in the admin UI that could trigger equivalent commands to more than one drush command on a single page?
So the performance page might be an example of that. Clear caches is one thing you can do from there. And I don't know that there are drush commands for changing the caching age or enabling, disabling aggregation for CSS and JavaScript files. But even if there isn't one now, there might be in the future. So it's certainly possible to have multiple commands on one admin page.
Yeah, because the thing I sort of worry about is if you pack everything uh, in that help section on top of the page and you have more than one command that is triggerable on the page, then how clear would it be which, or is that overcomplicating things, what I'm doing right now?
Well, I would say, or actually, let's just go to the extend page. There's a drush command to enable a module. There's a drush command to uninstall a module. So both of those, I guess uninstall would go on this page, and install could go on this page.
But then there would be same commands at several pages because the same drush command is for themes as well.
Good point. So on the appearance page, you can enable or disable a theme. So that would be two drush commands, enable and disable. That would apply here.
And you can set the admin theme as well, those three.
Oh, is there a drush command for that?
I think yes. Yeah.
Okay. Um, and then it becomes a question of what the help text should be. And the example here, I don't really like. You can also do this via the CLI. Do this is too vague, in my opinion. You can also set maintenance mode. Um, and I don't know the details of the mset command, but either there's a separate command for unsetting maintenance mode, or else there's an argument to brush mset that determines whether you're enabling or disabling. But in this example, I would prefer you can also set maintenance mode using the CLI.
Can it also set the command? Sorry, not command, the message.
Say again?
Can the drush command also set the message?
I don't know.
Because
Yeah,
then
so there's this.
it doesn't do everything on this page, or maybe it does, but it should be so that if we say it can do this, then it should be able to do everything on the page.
Yeah.
I think if it's in the start of the page. Especially since there is only one button submit there, so it should be able to do everything that is submitted.
Okay, so in a terminal window, I did the help command for the mset command, and just so that you can see it, I'll paste it into this text box. Set maintenance mode, put site into maintenance mode with value 1, or remove site from maintenance mode with value 0. So as I was saying, there's either an option, and that's the way it's implemented, to enable or disable, but it does not have an option for setting the message that if there is a drush command, it's separate from this one. But anyway, getting back to the question of placement, as long as the text is sufficiently explicit, I think that gathering potentially several drush commands at the top of the page in the help region makes sense. And I would argue that um, that putting it all in one place reduces the potential for clutter rather than putting it after the help text.
But but if you place it if you place basically let's call it CLI block in the help section, then it's still after the help text block. either way.
Well, you have the option. You, the site builder can choose what Claro what order to put them in,
Okay,
and
yeah.
and frankly, I think that the main help should go first, and the CLI help should go second.
Yeah.
And just for the sake of illustration, let me add a block. Um, a basic block, and let's make this CLI commands. And let's say you can set maintenance mode from the CLI using, and then do I have a code option here? No. It just put in single quotes, dr maint set 0 or unset using dr maint. I have this backwards. This is where the 0 goes. And this one should be a 1. So let me save that block. And then back here, let me place the block. And let me show the title just to see what it would look like. And in real life, it would not be a content block. It would be something configurable. Oh, what happened here? Got them in the wrong order. So in real life, we would get the appropriate help for the appropriate page. Well, that title is way too prominent. But as sort of a proof of concept, um, we would have a single block for CLI commands, and it would list information for any commands that are relevant for this admin page. Ralph.
Um, I would probably rather trim down that text and simply say, make it simply plain, make the title a bit more descriptive, CLI commands in the terminal, or however it's described, to be more waypointing. But then the listing of available commands on this page, I would simply make dr maintenance set 1 to activate and unset with dr maintenance set 0. Simply a list that is easier skimmable what the actual commands are, and lead with that instead of adding a lot of text first with the actual commands that are the interesting detail afterwards.
I know a lot of people don't use or are very unfamiliar with HTML definition list, but I think this could be something like a definition list command and what it does.
Oh, gee. I wonder if I use source, can I make a definition list? And then instead of a paragraph, I would have a definition term. Um, Address set maintenance one. And then DD, that's the correct tag, isn't it? Set maintenance mode. And then DT trash maintenance set 0. Reset maintenance mode. I haven't hand coded a definition list in a while. Simo, does that look like the right syntax?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, seems to be formatted correctly. And then over here,
Obviously, it needs some different CSS styling, but
Yeah.
semantically it would be.
so Ralph, what do you think of that suggestion in terms of scannability? And you were suggesting that I lead with the commands rather than uh, lead with the description.
As Simo said, it definitely needs some refinement in regard of the CSS styling. At the moment, it's having two lines for a single command is a bit hard to skim, but otherwise, if it's better formatted and scannable and styled, then definitely. And yeah, the other thing is the title CLI commands is again the point Simo made with a CLI command. What does it imply or what does it mean for people unfamiliar with it? And where they have to go to apply that command. That could be a question that arises. So making the title itself a bit slightly more verbose might be the other thing, but the direction is definitely good that way.
So are we ready at this point to make some concrete recommendations? And I guess the idea of making it a block that can be configured by the site builder gives a lot of flexibility. Again, as I said before, you can enable it or disable it per user role, but not per user. Um, it gives you some control over where to position it, although uh, well, what seems to me the natural place to put it is right after the usual help block. It also gives you the option of overriding the title. So whatever title we do come up with um, could be overridden in the block configuration. You can put something that will make sense to your admin users in here. Um, so shall we make that a recommendation for this issue?
Yep.
And shall we also recommend that as part of this issue, something be added to the help page? I get a thumbs up from Ralph and from Simo. Okay, so that's two recommendations.
And in regards of the other points we made, that should we also make recommendations in regard of follow-ups?
So what follow-ups did you have in mind?
For one, having the option on a per user basis to hide it or completely
Okay.
remove it. Basically adding that sort of pattern that could be reused then for descriptions and glossary as well. That would be one thing. And yeah, also apply then as another follow-up that pattern then to descriptions. And in regards of glossary, yeah, add basically a glossary to the help text as well as in context glossary for abstract concepts so that you get a pop-up. So again, in the context of Drupalisms this way. And that could also help, for example, for the problem Simo raised in regards of what is a CLI and where to use it. That could be simply be avoided by providing that in context glossary. So if someone clicks on CLI, then that person gets basically yeah, the R command that is, for example, available in the terminal on your server. Something like that.
So as a follow-up for the current issue, we could say that clicking on CLI should give a more complete description, or should we at this point come up with a better title for this block?
Definitely a better title is prefer in the short term is definitely preferable, but still to completely be clear to less technical users and people not familiar with Drupal, it would be still helpful to provide a more verbose definition or explanation what this means or entails.
Let's see, maybe before the definition list, we could have a line of description following commands. Oh, I don't know. CLI commands can perform some of the same operations as this. page, this form. Suggestions for improvement?
Still, if you take the perspective, yeah, terminal.
Should I just say terminal? Should I use both? Or should I spell out what CLI stands for?
Yeah. I think command line makes sense because terminal is something that maybe differ from different operating systems or different kind of selected operating system tools.
Okay, and this should probably be title case, not. Oop.
Well,
And it's not so serious if you make a command line error, but if you make a terminal error, that's bad.
Oh, because of the different meanings of the word terminal. Terminal being an adjective meaning final or end.
just one question. Would it make sense to provide also the context where it is applied, that command line CLI command, meaning on the server? Something like that.
So can you suggest wording?
I'm still command line interface CLI commands.
Well, that's
Command line interface commands also. Oh, simply available commands on the server or on this on the server CLI, or
if you have access to the server. Something like that.
no, I simply think, but my problem is that little, in air quotes, long description probably won't be read. Meaning the following CLI commands can perform some of the same operations as this form if you have access to the server. That is no people will skim or gloss over that, and directly the points of interest are basically the commands, and setting the context should, from my perspective, simply be covered in the title, and simply there something like available commands on the server, something like that.
So you want to make that part of the title?
Yeah. Simply say what is available in which context and where. And underneath simply the detailed list, and
I'm
the
not sure
only
I like that, but
the only problem is on the server is again requires some knowledge to abstract that. I just
can
want to make
shorten.
the point to say these are the commands and they should be applied where.
So maybe that's too wordy and be used on the server. How's that?
If you simply strike commands at the end, just have command line interface CLI, and then underneath these CLI commands can be used on the server or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, we're getting near the end of the hour. So I guess shall we leave it at that?
Yeah. As a starting point for a discussion, it's totally fine, I guess.
Okay. Um, so would one of you like to leave a comment on the issue, or shall I plan to do it?
I can
I
do
should
it.
have. Okay.
I can do. I had anyway to write up a comment for the last meeting with Thomas, so I can summarize it. And yeah, so that the recommendation for the current issue is basically, oops, the thing we basically had here with the blog in context in the help section, and adding the list also to a dedicated list of all available commands to the help page
Right.
in the scope of this issue. And then also for the broader context, for follow-ups, provide basically the points we made about the user configuration on a per user basis and the broader scope for descriptions and for glossary. And
Okay.
the glossary would definitely also help for the point you see here in the title with command line interface CLI. That way, it could be simplified by simply using CLI instead of that verbose command line interfacing, provide some more explanation and context. But yeah, that is out of scope for this one.
Okay. So we're a little past the hour. So let's leave it there. I won't be able to come to the meeting next week. The Zoom will be available as usual.
No.
And thank you all for discussing this issue.
Thank
I
you.
think people are very excited about this whole subject, so I expect we'll see some action on it.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully. Yeah, I will summarize it over the weekend and post on the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Yes, you
Thanks.
too.
Have a nice weekend.
Bye bye.
Bye.